We are making the coin purse. This is from Simplicity Pattern 1338. It is a lined coin purse with a zip top, and it's got a little tab on the side. You as the designer can choose whether to add the tab or not, but I'll show you the instructions with the tab. To start with, we have cut out our pattern pieces. We have 2 of the fabric bag, 2 of the bag in our lining, and we have 2 pieces of the bag in our interfacing. We've also cut 1 rectangle that we're going to use for the loop piece, and we have a zipper that we have shortened to 5 inches if you were unable to find a 5-inch zipper, which is a little bit of an odd size to find. So the first step is going to be to affix our interfacing to the outer pieces of our bag. The interfacing is a product that comes in a lot of different weights. This particular one is sort of a middle weight interfacing. And you're going to notice it has one side that's smooth and one side that's either got little dots on it or it's got a shiny surface. That is the side that has the heat-sensitive glue, so that when you apply the heat of your iron to it, it is going to stick to your fabric. Interfacing is going to give it extra body and support. We're going to come over to our iron, where we are going to activate that glue on the interfacing. So when we're working with interfacing, nice idea to go ahead and protect your ironing board and your iron. To do that, I'm going to take a piece of tissue and I'm going to sandwich my project in the tissue. You could use regular gift wrap tissue, or you could use a piece of parchment paper for this. And this is going to make sure that that heat-sensitive glue doesn't get on either the ironing board or your iron. It is pretty strong when it gets going. So I'm going to use an iron that is the right heat for the fabric I'm using. I'm going to apply a little bit of light pressure. And what I'm doing is I'm allowing that glue to melt and to bind our interfacing to our fabric. You'll be able to see when it does that, it gets a nice stiff quality, a little bit more body to it. Okay, so once I have done that, we're going to continue working with one of our outside pieces. And our instructions will tell you that you're going to attach the zipper to the front of your bag, and you may be asking yourself, which one's the front? You can choose. And the bag, the coin purse, is really going to be pretty much reversible, but it's useful to think of it in terms of picking a front to your bag. So we're going to put our bag piece facing right side up. We're going to take our zipper and we're going to point it right side down so that they are touching each other. And the top of our zipper, meaning that those metal stops where the zipper stops, are going to be a 1/2 inch away from the end of your front. And you're going to put some pins in. Now, often you will see me pinning perpendicular to where I'm stitching. In this particular case, I'm going to put my pins so that they are parallel to my stitching line. So as I've got this pinned, I'm going to change the foot on my sewing machine. You may need to consult your manual to see how you change a foot, but in many of the newer machines, there's going to be a lever that you can release on the back of your presser foot. You can just push it forward and your foot is going to drop off. We'll set that one aside. Your zipper foot is going to vary a little bit in the way that it looks depending on your machine. But generally speaking, it's going to be a single foot that comes forward and has holes on either side so that you can position your needle either to the left or the right of your foot. And that's so that you can avoid running over your zipper tracks when you're sewing. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and put my foot on so that I'm leaving it, the needle running to the left side of the zipper foot. And then I'm going to just pull my thread over to make sure that when I put my foot down, the thread's going to be held in place by the zipper. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to baste it. Our basting stitch is just like a regular straight stitch, but it's longer. On my machine, my standard length is 2.5 millimeters. I'm going to go ahead and boost that up to 5. That's my longest stitch. So I'm going to have a series of longer stitches rather than tinier stitches, and that's our baste. And I'm going to go down the center of the tape here as I'm basting this in place. And I'll remove my pins as I go along. I'm keeping the raw edge of the zipper even with the raw edge of the fabric. My apologies if I didn't specify that clearly as we got this pinned, but we have the zipper tape even. Okay, and I've gone ahead and stitched. And you can see that my zipper stops, the metal stops at this end are about a 1/2 inch away from the edge. You can see that my shortened zipper, the stop that I created out of thread, is also about a 1/2 inch from the end. So my zipper is centered in there. And we can just do a little visual check. You can see how, if this is the outside of our bag, it's lining up correctly with our finished seam there. Then we're going to pull one of our lining pieces, and we're going to sandwich the zipper tape between the fabric and the lining. So if we're looking again at our project, we've got our fabric right side up, our zipper has been sewn in right side down, and now we're going to set our lining with the finished side, the right side down as well, so that the right side of our lining, right side of our fabric are facing each other. And then I'm going to pin that in place. And I'm pinning it so the raw edges are even, and even with the zipper tape. I'm going to go ahead and put one toward the back here. Now I'm going to be starting to sew from this end, and in order to make that a little bit easier, I'm going to go ahead and open my zipper tape about halfway. Now when I did my initial basting, I could also have opened it a little bit there if that bulky zipper top is kind of in my way. So I've got this pinned in place, zipper halfway open. I'm going to take it back to the machine. And I'm going to continue with my basting stitch because I'm going to make sure I get all of these layered together the way I want them before I shorten my stitches and make them nice and tight. Now you may have noticed with my basting I did not backstitch because our basting is sort of a holding stitch. I'm not going to lock my stitches in place this time in case I need to remove them. When I get to this point where I'm approaching that bulky zipper pull, I'm going to go ahead and leave the needle in the fabric. I'm going to lift my presser foot, and I'm going to turn my project just a little so I can duck in here and get to the zipper. I'm going to pull the zipper back up into place at the top so that now the bulky part of the zipper has gone behind where I'm stitching, and I'm going to continue stitching forward with that zipper pull out of my way. Okay, and you can see these nice long basting stitches here holding everything together. Gives me a chance to pull this apart, take a look, see if everything's where it needs to be. Always a nice idea to test our zipper, make sure we haven't gotten anything caught in there so it's not opening. So you'll begin to see it emerge. You'll see how the finished side of the lining is going to be on the inside of the zipper, finished side of the project on the outside. So that is all lining up correctly. So I'm going to go over it one more time, and this time I'm going to shorten my stitch back to my regular stitch length, which is 2.5. I'm going to open my zipper halfway so that as I'm starting, I'm not getting that caught. And this time I am going to backstitch, so I'm going to come forward. Whoops. That's what happens when you switch between machines. You forget where you're going. Okay, so this time I'm going ahead and stitching my smaller stitches right over that previous basting line because I liked where that landed. I'm going to reach in and I'm going to close my zipper. And then I'm going to continue forward. And at the other end, I'm going to go ahead and put in my back stitching. All right, so that is our first side. We're going to do our second side in the same manner. So I'm going to start with my other outside body piece. I'm going to come back and I'm going to lay down my zipper. I've pulled my other side out of my way. And you're going to notice, this will affirm that you're in the right direction here, that our zipper pull is now going to be on the other side because we're doing the reverse side of the bag. So once again, I've got the right side of the zipper to the right side of the fabric. I've got the zipper tape even with the upper edge, and I'm just going to make sure I'm about a ½ inch in from the edge of my fabric here. And you'll see that this new piece is going to line up well with the side that we've already sewn on. So I'm going to return to my baste stitch. Okay, and as I approach this end, I'm going to move this out of the way again and on down. Double check my zipper so we can see how that's going to fold like that. So just as we did before, we're going to lay it on the table. So for the side I'm working on, here's my right side facing up, and we're going to sandwich that zipper tape in between there and the lining, just like that. So again, we've got project, zipper tape, lining. Come back over here. I'm still on my basting stitch, which, whoops, should be a 5. With the baste, I don't have to backstitch, so I'm going to go ahead and start. When I get to about here, I'm going to go ahead and get my zipper pull out of the way. It's back to the other end. Whoop! Forgot to lower that presser foot. Just going to double check, make sure I'm nice and smooth in there. It's my row of basting. Now I'm just going to double check the look here. Whoop! Go ahead and close my zipper. Again, nice to double check, make sure nothing interfered with the track. Whoop. And we can see that our lining is on either side of the wrong side of the zipper, and the body of our bag is on either side of the right side of the zipper. Everything looks good. So now I'm going to go back to the side, whoop, right over here, where I have just basted. I'm going to change my stitch length back to my standard 2.5. And then I'm going to go right back over the line that I had just basted, this time with back stitching and my shorter stitches. As I get close to this end with a zipper pull, reach in there and get it out of the way. That is just an awesome trick for keeping that zipper pull out of your way so you don't have really ugly noogies where that zipper pull is. All right, so our zipper is in. We're going to do one more step with the zipper. We're going to come to the pressing table, and we're going to go ahead and give this a nice press. Crisp this up on either side of the zipper, first for the body of the bag. And then we're going to flip and make sure that our lining is pressed in place on either side of the zipper. Okay, looks sort of like butterfly wings with our zipper in the middle. Now we're going to do a top stitching, which is going to be a visible row of stitching, but we're just going to go through the body of the bag and the zipper when we do this. So we're pulling all of our lining back so that we're just exposing our zipper tape and the body of the bag. And we're going to put in a row of stitching parallel to the zipper that's going right through the top of the bag section. As we finished up last time, my thread was kind of left hanging here. I'm just going to spin that so that again it's under the foot when I resume my sewing. I am going to place my needle. In this case, I'm going to place it so that the back edge of my foot is even with the edge of my project. Your foot may be a little bit different design, so you may need to find a little bit of a different reference point for doing your edge stitching. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to go ahead and back stitch, and then I'm going to come forward, edge stitching along the zipper. And just to make sure, I think I'd missed the zipper here, but I'm going to go ahead and slide it out of the way just to make sure it's not in our way. Make sure my lining is free. I'm going to come right to the end there. And then I'm going to go ahead and flip my project. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to make sure my lining pieces are both free. I'm going to set down just my bag and zipper here under the foot. Move that thread again. Pesky thread. Do my back stitch. Come on forward. It actually looks like I'm going to be just fine by the zipper pull there. All right. Trim my threads. All right, and I'm going to let my bag rest here for just a moment, and we're going to make that small tab that we have on the side of our project. I picked up my tab piece, which is a rectangle. I'm going to fold my rectangle lengthwise. So along that long side, I'm just going to fold it in half, wrong sides together, and I'm going to press. So I'm going to make a nice sharp crease down the long side. I'm going to open that crease out, and I'm going to fold each of the sides in toward that center line. And I'm going to press along each of those lines, like so. I'm going to fold them together, and I'm going to press the whole thing down. So just to review, we've got both sides folded in toward the center and then in half. Make a nice crisp edge. I'm going to take it to the machine and I'm going to sew these open edges closed to make the strip for our tab. I've still got my zipper foot in place, so I'm going to go ahead and raise my foot. I'm going to use that release again to remove my zipper foot, and instead I'm going to reinstall my conventional foot. And I'm going to make sure that my thread is going through the window in the foot there. And I'm going to stitch this along the edge. I'm in probably 1/8 of an inch, may even be a little less. Stitch or two forward, a couple stitches back, and down. A couple stitches back, and forward. Now you may have heard this funny noise here, right there when I hit the scissors tool on my machine. My machine actually has an automatic thread cutter, so that's why you haven't seen me cut the threads at the beginning or end of the project. My machine is actually doing that for me. I know, it's pretty cool. All right, so there is my tab. And to use the tab, I'm going to go ahead and fold it in half. Okay, now we're going to bring everything together. I've got my tab, I've got my coin purse sections that have been sewn together with my zipper. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to baste, or stitch in this case, the tab piece on my project. And I'd like to have my tab on the opposite side from my zipper pull. So I am going to attach it right here. It really doesn't matter. Once I know that it's going to be opposite the zipper here, I can either attach it to this side or this side. It's going to get sandwiched in there, so whichever side it's on is fine. I'm going to take a quick measurement because I want to attach this tab a 1/2 inch below my zipper. So I'm going to put the edge there about a 1/2 inch below. I'm going to keep it free from the lining and attach it just to the body of one side of the bag. So it's right there. And now I'm just going to stitch across to hold this in place. Seam allowance is a 1/2 inch. I'm going to do just a little bit less than that. I'm going to stitch across it. Just like that to hold it in place. And now we're going to turn the project so that I'm going to take my front and my back pieces and lay them right sides together. And I'm going to have my lining pieces and they're going to be right sides together. So that's our project. We've sort of flipped the butterfly, so now we have the 2 lining wings, we have the 2 project wings. And now I'm going to pin this in place. Our seam allowance for the project and the lining are all going to go toward the project, toward the outer pieces here. And that's kind of following along our top stitching. And I'm going to put some pins. I'm matching up this tab on the bottom, pinning around. Nice to get these pins in there to hold the project in place so it doesn't shift around and kind of get away from us once we get it on the table. Oh, in feeling my zipper pull, I remember what I forgot to do, which is to open the zipper halfway. So I can still do that without unpinning, but you may want to go ahead and open your zipper already. If you're watching this before you go ahead and pin, open your zipper halfway before you do that. And the project will remind you, because you'll feel that zipper pull and you'll know that something's a little wacky. Now we're going to want to leave an opening at the bottom of our lining. And that's what we're going to use to turn our project right side out in a couple minutes. So the opening probably about 2 inches, 2.5 inches there in the lining. And we're going to sew the outer part of the bag around all the way. Since we're going to leave this opening, we're going to begin our stitching at one side of the opening. So I'm going to start right over here when I get it to the machine. I'm going to stitch around the outside. I'm going to come down all in one line of stitching, come around the bottom of my bag. I'm going to come back up around this part of the lining, and then I'm going to end right here so that I've left this section open. When you get to the zipper, you want to take it nice and easy over those coils. Come on back around the other side. All right, now I'm going over my tab spot. Again, I'm going to slow down a little bit here because the machine is going through a lot of layers. And I'm going to take it nice and slow over that zipper. Curve myself back toward the lining. And then as I come back to my last pin, I'll go ahead and stop my sewing here. Use that little thread cutter. So now we have assembled everything. We've done our stitching and our unbroken line to bring our whole project together here. Before we go to turn our project, we're going to do a little bit of trimming and clipping. We clip around the curves to reduce bulk and also to keep our fabric from pulling around curves when we turn it. So on each of these curved edges, you can see I'm making V-shaped cuts, and I'm going to do that on both my lining and on the outer part of my bag. Okay, and then just to further reduce any bulkiness, I'm going to trim a little bit off my seams here, even where I just clipped. And I'm taking off my extra zipper tab there. Now that your zipper is sewn in on both sides, you don't have to worry. I'm not going to trim this area where my opening is. I'm going to go ahead and leave that where it is for now. We have trimmed our project. We've trimmed our seam allowance. We've clipped around the curve. And now comes the moment of truth. We're going to go ahead and turn it right side out. So I'm going to enter through my opening in the lining, pull up my lining, and I'm sort of pushing the lining back around the project. We're going to see our zipper come through here. And you can go ahead and, if you can, get your fingers in there and open the zipper just a little bit wider if you need to. I'm going to reach in, I'm going to pull out the outer part of my project. And I'm going to finish opening the zipper. I'm going to pull out my lining. And I'm going to give it a little bit of a press. I'm going to press across the opening in the lining and make sure that that remaining seam allowance is folded nice and smooth. And with the lining out, I'm also going to press around the body of my project. I'm going to put my thumb in through the lining one more time, and I'm just going to kind of push along that seam allowance just to kind of smooth that out on both sides around that curve in the bottom before I give it the iron here. I'm going to go back to the machine for one final step. I'm going to close up this opening in the lining by stitching just a row of edge stitching right there to close it up. Okay, I'm going to lift my foot. I'm going to set this in just a little distance back from the opening. Make sure my opening is right there. Come forward, do my back stitch. And then I'm going to back stitch and trim my thread. I'm also going to trim the ends off before I put it in. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tuck my lining in to my bag, just like that. And there is my lined coin purse.